How are we doing? I'm Paul Callahan, and I'm going to take my class before. I did that class last year in my book, When Democracy Fails, a three-part class. And then just last week, I did a class on Judge Carmichael, when Union troops surrounded our courthouse, the provost marshal went in and beat our judge on the bench and ripped him out and sent him off to prison. So in this class, I'm going to be focused on General Tilghman. And some things will be redundant a little bit with Carmichael. I try not to take it out. There's just so much information, I try to pare it down. And I always like to start out with a story. So I'm going to tell you how I came about writing my book. And what I did, there's a new app, or computer website, I should say, called newspapers.com. And it's phenomenal. If you're an amateur historian, I highly recommend getting a subscription. It's not very much, because you can search historical newspapers worldwide. All the way back to the 1800s, thousands of papers. And you can search it by keyword. So that was key to my research in my book, because wow, I want to go find out about Judge Carmichael. So you put Carmichael in articles or Tilghman. And that's exactly what happened. How my book got written, I was in newspapers.com, and I came across this article right here. Efforts of the rebels to revolutionize Maryland. And it's from the New York Herald, August 16, 1861. And from the special Washington dispatches. Came from Washington directly. And you read this a little bit more detail in this newspaper article later, but if you read into it, you'll find, go down, it mentions General Tench Tilghman, Tulsa County, Maryland. What was he doing? Well, they were saying he is amassing a rebel army. And he's going to lead it up to Delmarva. And it wasn't a single article, it was multiple articles that went over a time period about 10 days or 2 weeks. They reinforced each other. And they said, what we told you last week, we're reasserting, we found more information, more intelligence. And General Tench Tilghman was part of this plan. I'll describe what the plan was. Here's another article the next day about the attack on Washington. Planned the Confederate Army that General Tilghman was going to participate in. New York Herald on the 20th had very, very detailed, long articles, very detailed military information, what the Confederate attack plan was going to be, what the counterplan of the army was going to be. And again, General Tilghman was involved. Important news from Washington, a threat of attacking the Capitol by rebels. And the reported flank movement from the Maryland side. These articles I found in every major paper in North America. I say that because it was in Canada also. Excuse me, I got to keep drinking because I had throat radiation in the spring and my mouth is really dry. Then I found it in every major paper in Europe. Wow, that's amazing. And it was used also to inflame the war passions in the North. Our capital was about to be attacked by God, inflaming the rebels out there. And it was. There's other articles. Hey, governors of Massachusetts, you're going to get your people down here now. Inflaming war passions. So that was really, really cool. And I thought, man, I came across some really neat historical information that no one's really dug up before. And now I want to explain to you what this intelligence that the War Department was putting out, what it entailed. And it was about the Confederate attack plan and Maryland secession. And it basically started out that General Tilghman was amassing a rebel army down here in Accomack, Virginia. You remember that Accomack? Comes later in this, Accomack, Virginia. And rebel forces and militias were coming across the bay, also down from Philadelphia. Very interesting. And then it goes on, it says, at the right time, General Tilghman will bring his rebel army up to the Delmarva Peninsula, gather more secessionists as he goes. And then at the right time, the mayor of Baltimore, with the confession of Baltimore, will have some sort of demonstration. And the purpose of that demonstration in Baltimore was to draw Union troops from the capital towards Baltimore to request that. And then the Maryland legislature would issue an ordinance of secession, and they were already coordinated with General Beauregard and General Johnson. It was a pre-conceived plan, and as soon as they issued an ordinance of secession, the rebel army would come across the Potomac and flank Washington on both sides. Wow, that is amazing. I think that was very amazing. But there were some couple of issues with it. Catch up with my slides. And what I found was, one, I had a question. I was a Marine Corps officer. I flew fighters in the Marine Corps, but every Marine is an infantry officer first. So I thought, why would you, if you got this intelligence, why would you publish it on newspapers? Doesn't make sense. You don't do that. So I had some stuff there. But I continued digging into newspaper.com, and I came across I'm sorry. Part of that plan of General Tilghman involved was to add as a blocking agent so that Washington could be reinforced, part of that. And then I found this. General Tilghman publishes his denial in the New York Herald. And you see the date right there, Oxford. And he says, I am not organizing secessionists anywhere. I'm not taking command of a rebel army. He doesn't know anything about this, and I'm going to hold whoever's responsible, saying his lies to me, fully responsible for this. And we'll get into more of the details later on. So I'm like, wow, amazing. Then I got more questions. Why, if he was going to be a general for the Confederates, why would he write a denial? And when his plan was foiled, why did he flee south? Why would he do this? Somebody was lying. And that motivated me to find out why. And I was lucky. We're in a period of history. I talk about newspapers.com, where you search all these newspapers. The Maryland State Archives, everything the state legislature did in that summer session of 61 and 4 is online. The Maryland State Archives. You read all the journals, every publication. So in the spring, when I was doing research, I was out of flying on an airline pilot because I was dealing with cancer. My hobby became, let's research all this stuff. So you had the archives. Maryland State Archives, National Archives also has stuff online. And then there's another great resource. It is called the War Rebellion, the official records of the Union Federal Army. I didn't bring a copy, but it's a 139 volume set. And each book is about the size of the Bible, small print. It has all the official records. Well, I found at the University of Oregon that digitized that sucker, and I can keyword search that. So when I was researching Judge Carmichael, whatever, I could put in Carmichael, all this stuff up there, find his letters. So we were to my Carmichael class last week. I got a lot of that. So all this synergy of technology made me become a heck of a researcher. It's like when I was flying fighters in the Marine Corps. When I was very, very new nugget, I went out and fought an F4 while I ate his lunch. I thought I was that good. Technology of the airplane I was in was so far superior. And so I relied upon this technology to do something that really no good stories we ever did before, and it ended up in this book right here. Because there's so much information. And one thing, everyone has read this book, it's very well sourced. It's 900 footnotes, citing 1,100 sources. And it's a really good document of what happened in Maryland. It's the first book really written that comprehensively covers what happened in Maryland during the Civil War. Not battles, the political side.
Just for information, I think I told you this last week.
Yes.
Talbot County Historical Society is trying to do the same thing with the Star Democrats and the local papers going back. Josh and I have been helping out in the archives. We've gone back to like 1871, putting in the names. So we have that project is going on at the Talbot County Historical Society.
And it's incredible.
Democrat papers.
The only time I actually had to leave my house to do research, I had to go to the Maryland room because I needed copies of Star Democrat because they weren't in the newspaper and the Gazette. For some reason, Star Democrat historical copies were gone out of the Maryland room, but it was a Gazette. I found the information I wanted in Gazette. And that was in relation to, from the last class, Henry Holly Goldsboro being arrested for participating in arbitrary arrests. So anyway, now I'm going to back up a little bit. I told you a little story here about how I came to write my book, why I did, because I found this wonderful information, who was lying, and I want to get into all this stuff. But I can back up, because the context of what General Tilghman was in a broader context of the Civil War itself. And there's a lot of misconceptions. People don't really understand. Some people think it's all about slavery. And they justify uses of the Constitution. Well, they need to do it, it's about slavery. So we're going to back up a little bit and just a very, very quick overview on that. So what caused the Civil War? Very basic. And the simple answer is, well, secession caused the Civil War. Duh. The states left. There was a battle around that. But you don't get off the hook that easy. So what caused secession? And two schools of thought, and people still fight over this today. You'll see online chat rooms, and slavery and states' rights. And I say yes, absolutely. Both. Obviously, the first 7 states seceded because of slavery, they wanted to protect not slavery where it existed in the state, but in the territories of the West, because they will become states and they want to protect their political power in Washington, U.S. Senate. And then there's states' rights, and I say that because many of these states believe they were sovereign, they had the right to secede, but more importantly, when Mr. Lincoln says, hey, I'm raising 75,000 troops to enter in, bring those 7 states back, 4 more states go, that is totally unconstitutional. President Buchanan just said that, you can't coerce the military states, and the act of Mr. Lincoln threatening to go into these other states was the main reason for the states to secede from the Union. Virginia, North Carolina, Arkansas, and Tennessee. Before that, they had the conventions, they voted no, a very wide margin. We will not secede the Union until that big event, and that goes into states' rights. Another big reason for the cause of civil war, and I'll say a constitutional flaw. And why is that? And that is because the Constitution is totally silent on American secession. Doesn't say a word about it. So some people say, see, states aren't allowed to secede because it's not allowed in the Constitution. Other people would say, well, wait a minute, there's that 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment says, Mr. Federal Government, you only got the powers that's given to you by the states. And anything that's not specifically given to you is reserved for the states. Therefore, the right to secede is reserved for the states. There was a big debate, and anyone was taking Raymond Burns' class, the winner of Dixon 10. For almost immediately from the Constitution, there was debate by whether to secede or not to secede. Because the Constitution was flawed. So I think it was a flaw. They should have just put in there. If it's a secede, you got to do it by this method. Probably wouldn't do it more. Or they should put in there, you sign up, it's forever, you can't go. Maybe they wouldn't. The fact that it was silent and was different opinions. And I'll refer you to this gentleman right here, Dwight D. Eisenhower. I think we all can raise a great patriot of America. And he had a picture of Robert E. Lee in the Oval Office. And someone wrote in and said, why do you have a picture of a traitor in the Oval Office? And he gave these reasons. But one of the things he said is that at the time, the war between the states, the issue of secession had remained unresolved for more than 7 years. Men of probity, character, public standing, and unquestioned loyalty, both North and South, had disagreed over this issue as a matter of principle from the day of Constitutional adoption. Whether you secede or not was decided by the blood of Americans. It wasn't decided by the U.S. Supreme Court making a decision. It wasn't decided by an act of Congress. It wasn't decided by an amendment. It wasn't decided by a vote. It was decided by blood, by war. Okay. The objectives of the war. Okay, now we're going to, what were they trying to achieve? Well, the southern states basically wanted independence. And I say this because I've heard from other people, with historians, even right here in Tulsa County. They wanted to take over the North and destroy the Constitution. Don't know. Their goal was just to secede and to be left alone. And as soon as they gained their independence, they would throw down their sword. And that's pretty clear. But for the North, they wanted the states to return. And that's what their war objective was. At least early. But then people say, wait a minute, Mr. Calhoun, I thought it was a big war about slavery, Well, maybe caused by slavery, but it's being fought for different reasons. So the question about abolition, you can say after the Emancipation Proclamation. Maybe you could probably just say the North was fighting for abolition after that. That was January 1863. That was in the 3rd year of the war that began. That maybe started for that. And a lot of the Northern troops were not very happy with that at all. This little point, there was 4 slave states that stayed in the Union the whole time. And slavery remained until they passed the 13th Amendment. The Emancipation Proclamation freed no slaves in the slave states of the Union, freed no slaves in Maryland at all. In fact, it did free the slaves in the southern states that the Union already occupied. So in fact, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't really free many slaves at all. So that's an interesting point to note to understand. Mr. Lincoln was from the get-go trying to abolish slavery that existed. He had done that proclamation order, it's abolished, but he kept slavery in Maryland. Maryland abolished slavery its own in November 1st, 1864. Okay, so let's get more, that's good background. So, more war objectives. Okay, but for Marylanders also, this is very important. This is a document put out by the Maryland legislature published it January 4th, 1862. You notice 2,000 copies were published throughout the state. And what did it say? The purpose was to tell the Marylanders what the objects of the present war was. And they cited Mr. Lincoln, and they cited Congress. Congress had made resolutions to say to themselves. And Mr. Lincoln, when he came to office on March 4th, the first thing he did was to forward to the states what they called the Corwin Amendment. And the Corwin Amendment is a constitutional amendment that would have forever protected slavery where it existed. And Mr. Lincoln was saying, what I do about the southern states for slavery, either way. But anyway, put out the people of Maryland, and that document says that the wars being fought over Union only, and slavery will remain after the southern states are brought back. So this is the mindset of Marylanders, at least up to the Emancipation Proclamation. But we want to go a little bit more into Maryland. Yeah, Marylanders' view of democracy. This is very, very important. So this is a copy of the front page of the Constitution of Maryland. I wonder if this thing works. Okay. That was in effect during the Civil War. It was put together in 1850. It was ratified by the people of Maryland in 1851, a full decade before the war. And this is pretty interesting. It says, and this is the Declaration of Rights. In the very first paragraph, the Declaration of Rights of the Maryland Constitution states that all government of right originates from the people. It's founded in compact only and instituted solely for the good of the whole. And they have at all times, according to the mode prescribed in this Constitution, an inalienable right. The inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish their form of government in such manner as they may deem expedient. Where does this verbiage come from? The Declaration of Independence, almost word for word. It's what our founding fathers fought, they told the British. And the Maryland Constitution actually had procedures for Marylanders called a sovereign convention, be called by the governor, by the legislature, or even if it's put on ballot where the people want to vote for a sovereign convention, and they can change or alter. And that would have been the only way Maryland could have succeeded. But that's their view of democracy. People have the right to alter, change, and abolish. And that impacted much of what happened in Maryland later. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little more about Tench Tilghman. Then we set the stage a little bit. Who was he? He was a grandson of one of our nation's greatest patriots, a Lieutenant Colonel Tench Tilghman. Spelled the same name. And we see George Washington here, the big guy in the center, and right to the right, the profile is Lieutenant Colonel Tench Tilghman. George Washington's aide de camp.
The other one's Lafayette.
That was Lafayette, thank you very much. And Lieutenant Colonel Tench Tilghman, Washington entrusted him to bring the news of Cornwallis and surrender to the Continental Congress. Great patriot. And that was our general's grandfather. Okay, so here's a young image of Mr. Tilghman. We only have a couple. He was born March 25th, 1810 in Plymouth, outside of Oxford. He was raised by his grandmother, and I was the Lieutenant Colonel's wife. He graduated from Dixon College at age 17 and then went to West Point and graduated there in 1832. He participated in the Second Seminole War in Florida. Got to know General Winfield Scott very well, a lot of respect. Totally knew his acquaintance of Mr. Jeff Davis. Right here. His life passions were military, farming, and public works and service. We'll talk more about that. When he left the Maryland, when he left the official military, he joined the Maryland militia. And that's pretty standard. I think people in the Marine Corps would join the local guard when they get out, because the military was attached to this. And he rose to the rank of general, command of the 2nd Division of the Maryland militia, 1 inch short. He was a Whig, member of the Whig Party. And one of the things the Whig parties believe is that public works is a key to society's advancement. And for that, Mr. Tilghman was responsible for a lot. The Whig Party was a party of compromise. They kept a lot of the factions together for decades prior to the Civil War until the Whig Party dissolved. And when the Whig Party dissolved, Mr. Tilghman, General Tilghman, became a Democrat. He was responsible for the establishment of the Maryland Military Academy in Oxford. Pretty cool, the little town of Oxford. They had a military. First besides the Naval Academy, the first military academy Maryland had. And for 6 years, they drilled and had some of the best sons of people throughout Maryland. People came all over until there was a fire in 1855 that destroyed it. Unfortunately, never got rebuilt. But the officers' quarter, the Brad House, it's called the Brad House in Moore Street, is still there. And that's kind of cool. But he did that, part of advancing society with the education side. The trustees of the military academy was General Commander Buchanan, who's commander time. It was Admiral Buchanan who left for the Confederacy during the war, was head of the Confederate Navy. And then there was this other guy, Benjamin A. Bodle, Esquire, called it. I'm not sure who he is, but they were the trustees of the academy. He was responsible for bringing railroad through East and Eastern Shore, mainly through East into Oxford. They established it, this road from Oxford to Smyrna, Delaware. The idea of the railroad was, one, to have all this bounty of the bay going north, but also the route sending goods from New England to the south, went through Philadelphia, through Baltimore, and then down that way. And they thought they can get a lot of that by having these goods from the north, and vice versa, go from Philadelphia to Smyrna to Oxford, get on the ship, and go further south to get at it. So they thought economically was a great idea. They began surveying in 1855, and of course, the Civil War halted up the construction. So they did finally build that in Civil War. He was responsible for establishing Oxford Holy Trinity Church. Right there, we all know where that church is. For this denomination, if you had to go to church, you had to go to the hole in the wall down on South Road. Back in those days, they didn't have the peach blossom bridges. You did the east and you went to Alms House Road to the left. The east is way far away, but that's a long way to travel to get to hole from Oxford. So he got together and got permission in 1851 to put a church right there. He got this guy Chamberlain, James Chamberlain of Bonneville, to donate the land. And Tilghman paid most of the costs for the church. And he had a very famous architect, Richard from England, that designs churches, did the design of that. And if you go to the Trinity Church's website, you can find out a lot of history on that. Catch up on my slides. And again, the Civil War interrupted its construction, and the church never got finished until well after the Civil War. Tilghman was part of that. He was a man of agriculture. He believed mechanization was the future of agriculture. In 1836, he tested the Hussey Plymouth machine on Plymouth and sent out reports throughout the country on how the machine worked, that sort of stuff. He imported mechanical harvesters from Chicago to test, to exhibit the right reports. And obviously, as a farmer, like any farmer back then, he was a slave owner. And the slave record of 1860 showed he had 20 slaves, enslaved persons, ages 5 to 75. Interestingly, in my book, you'll see that it was very common back in that time to manumit your enslaved persons in the mid-30s. And one had excess labor because crops had gone from tobacco to wheat and cereals. You didn't need all that labor as excess. But another big reason was because Maryland law said once they turn age 45 or 40, I know 45 they changed to 40, you weren't allowed to free them. They were too old to work for themselves. You had to care for them for the rest of their lives. And Maryland law also said if they became infirm or disabled, physically or mentally, you're required to care for them the rest of their lives. So people with lesser means would just free them at age 35, age 36, you're all on your own. The fact that General Tilghman had like 5 enslaved persons beyond that age means he was responsible for caring for them. Tells you a little bit, there's no excuse for slavery, but tells you a little bit of insight. And that was part of it. He was a member of the Eastern Shore, the Maryland and the Eastern Shore Agricultural Society. And what's very interesting, remember the Agricultural Society, and the president of the Maryland Agricultural Society was a guy named John Merriman. If you know the famous Supreme Court Justice Tilghman, ex parte Merriman, John Merriman was involved with burning bridges after Baltimore riots, and he was arrested by the Union troops, and the British, of course, was suspended. But anyway, he knew John Merriman very, very well. And then General Tilghman became president of the United States Agricultural Society. And John Merriman was one of the vice presidents of the United States. The United States Agricultural Society had exhibits in Chicago and Richmond, and they were dealing with the British and bringing stuff over back and forth. And General Tilghman was president, and that became the USDA, I believe. He participated in democracy. Here's an article I found, and you notice I put a lot of copies of newspaper articles. He was a delegate at conventions of the Protestant and Episcopal Church in Maryland. He went to numerous conventions that participated as a delegate from our area. This was participating in the democratic process. Governor Hicks appointed him in 1856 to be a delegate to the Southern Commercial Convention. I'm not sure what the Commercial Convention is about, but I assume it's about commerce. So he did that. I keep going backwards in my stuff. He participated on the Eastern Shore Convention of 1858. A few words on this. This is really, really interesting. What was the Eastern Shore Convention of 1858? Well, what I found out is that several years prior, the Maryland legislature had appropriated all these taxes, millions of dollars of taxes. Everyone in the state was paying these taxes, and it was for public works throughout the state. Well, they got around to proving that public works in the Western Shore, but they never spent any money on the Eastern Shore. But they're being taxed. And after 2 or 3 or 4 years, the Eastern Shore would say, hey, this is a problem. I have a convention about this. And General Tilghman was a delegate, and it demanded their legislature, you're going to spend this money on, if you have to go to special session, you can spend it on Eastern Shore, or we might just cede the Eastern Shore and join Delaware. And I thought that was really cool. They were actually talking about a third of the delegates were actually opening ideas. We don't want to be a part of this. This goes on today, by the way. We don't want to be a part of Western Shore. We should part of Delaware and create Delaware. It was part of that. But the idea was, you see that idea of democracy. People can vote to change or alter a government. Maybe want to go over. And that put a lot of pressure on the bureaucrats in Annapolis to spend some of that money that Eastern Shore were paying taxes back on Eastern Shore. That's really cool. Participate in local politics. This is really cool. This is when the new oyster regulations came out. This is 1860. There was a big meeting in St. Michael's, and we're opposed to the state telling us what we can do with our oysters. And General Tilghman was part of that big meeting there. So he was all over the place. Here we go. He was urged to run for governor. You see newspaper, and he said, "No, I'm not going to run for governor." And then there was another one that he was urged to run for Congress. General Tilghman didn't run for Congress, but he was well liked. He did a lot for the community, a lot for Maryland, well respected, now internationally for all this other stuff, and he kept very, very active. Numerous other organizations, as I mentioned. He became a member of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He was a member of the Society of Cincinnati. Was his grandfather got that. That's the Society of Cincinnati. It's all the great patriots from the founding fathers and their families down. So he was a member of that. And he was appointed by the governor to be collector of Oxford, like Governor Hicks. I can't wait to tell you what the collector of Oxford did. He just collect taxes or whatever, but he did that too. But then he could join a convention and meet in Tulsa County, January 1st, 1861. Now, the background of this time frame is very important. President Buchanan was still president. President Buchanan says, I think, and the southern states have seceded. The 7 southern states have seceded. That's how Buchanan says, I don't think secession is legal, but sending military force in the states is definitely legal, and I have no authority to force the states to come back. And there was a belief there for a while that the southern states would go in peace. Okay, what should Maryland do if it's peace? You know, the idea of military coercion had not really come up until February, when the word got out that Mr. Lincoln was thinking about using force. And in this convention, his meeting in Tulsa County, they had some resolutions, and they blamed the North for all the troubles of the southern states, and they asked the governor to convene the legislature. So the legislature called sovereign convention, so that people can vote And this is from them to adopt such measures for Maryland's peace, security, and happiness. So the Solid Convention people can change the government and also can direct the government, whatever it is. So, but this is kind of a little dicey. It was in January 61. Next big event was the riots in Baltimore in April 19th. Just very quick overview of that. President Lincoln was now inaugurated. He was calling for we're going to send troops into the South to enforce the laws, to collect the taxes. That was seen for what it was, an act of war. We showed you how Marylanders viewed the democracy. People had the right to choose their government. Actually, the first, as troops went to Washington, they had to pass through Baltimore. It was the easiest route. Train came in, they could march across the city, or take rail cars, and on the train was the easiest route. First troops actually went through on April 18th. Really no event because they had full police escort. The next day on April 19th, the police, Marshal Kane, in charge of police force in Baltimore, could not find out when these troops were coming. They would telegraph Philadelphia, and no. The troops arrived in Baltimore. They started trying to cross the city. I'm going to read a lot here without police protection. And people of Baltimore got a little upset. Not a lot. Some says a couple hundred, some 800 in that range. Bricks started being thrown at these troops. And what were the people upset about? People were upset that these military forces were going to go use coerced cities. Now, that was the 6th Massachusetts. 6th Massachusetts were patriots. They were responding to what their president. But then again, so the people of Baltimore believed that they were being disloyal to principles of their democracy. Right. Anyway, bricks got thrown in. Pretty soon, the order to fire into the civilians was given. We have 12 civilians dead. Yeah, 12 civilians, 4 soldiers. But interesting enough, during that, Mayor Brown was the first one seen. The mayor of Baltimore marched with the Union troops, and shortly there to help keep the rioters away, and shortly after, the police marshal, George Kane, arrived with a squad of Baltimore police and put his police squad between the rioters and the men who protected the men. They pulled their pistols and told the civilian Baltimoreans, anyone who crosses my line will shoot you to get protection. And this is important, but a lot of civilians were killed. And it caused a huge uproar. In the North viewed it as traitorous Marylanders. Marylanders viewed it as these Northerners are shot people down the streets. So then we see immediately press releases in the North threatening the destruction of Baltimore, threatening to float every little thing Maryland down with Chesapeake, threatening to occupy Maryland and dig up the land to all the loyal men. It was very, very, very harsh. They said we're gathering people in the ranks, we're coming down there. There's another article, let Baltimore beware. Let Baltimore beware that she would not have her mind stand hereafter like the crumbling columns of Baalbek and amidst desolation. Here's another one, let no one indulge in regret at the probable destruction of Baltimore. And this is the one that talks about the penalty of Marylanders being traitorous, do that to 6th Massachusetts, and we're going to come down there and we're going to just take over Virginia, take over Maryland, divvy it up to all the loyal Northerners. And the last sentence says, anyway, it started. So it was very, it was a concern. Yes, sir.
The time frame here is almost the same as Fort Sumter.
Fort Sumter happened before.
Before that, okay, so before it had already been declared.
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say Fort Sumter was declared a war. That's all. You have to go to the war for that. Because I say in South Carolina, nobody was killed. The South did not declare war in the North from Sumter. I'm pretty sure Fort Sumter was April.
It was April.
It's April. I think it was before that. I think Bryce was after Fort Sumter. But
it's April 12th.
Thank you. I knew it was before. I couldn't get that. Yeah, I was thinking 13th. Nobody was killed, but he knew that. As far as I know, there's no declaration of war declared for the sun. But they can say that's official start of the war. Okay, so that was April 19th. And just very quickly, again, back to the Baltimore riots, so I held this press release very quickly. I'm paraphrasing here. All these militias just entered into Baltimore, and it came from all over, the 15,000. Colonel Trimble, I.R. Trimble, commanded the militias. The government of Baltimore couldn't control things, and they say, boy, everything's out of control. People are coming in, people are arming themselves. If they have more Union troops coming in, there's going to be bloodshed. They try to telegraph Mr. Lincoln, things are really bad here in Baltimore. Please don't send more troops. Lincoln was silent about 24 hours. So Governor Hicks decided to burn the bridges north, prevent more troops clashing with Baltimore's, because now all the Baltimore's were armed and militia. There was delegations sent. Governor Hicks had sent Mayor Brown and several Jack Walks to different meetings with Mr. Lincoln. And Mr. Lincoln goes, okay, we won't send more troops. I assure you that those troops in North have no hostile intent against Maryland. And we'll send troops around Baltimore. Okay, back up. And then on April 21st, General Butler shows up in the harbor of Annapolis, and he has his 8th Massachusetts Regiment, and he wants to land and occupy Annapolis. The governor of Maryland, Governor Hicks, says, no, do not land in Annapolis, go somewhere else. He did anyhow, and General Butler occupied Annapolis. He took control of the railroad between Annapolis and Washington. He took control of 2 miles either side and put out an order that if anyone interferes with us, we will execute you and we'll burn your house. Butler was not a nice man. So the next day, General Tilghman issues an order to his 2nd Division of Maryland Militia. So this is the background of this. And as a military officer, I call this a warning order. And I guarantee you right now, there's guards up and down the East Coast that are issuing without anything from the president or the governor, getting your men ready to go. They might be needed for a hurricane disaster. Okay. So Tilghman issues an order, and I'll just read it very quickly. Our fellow citizens of Baltimore have been slaughtered on our own soil by the soldiers of the U.S. government, which claims our support whilst it wages war upon our institutions. Our state has been made a separate military department. Our forts have been garrisoned, and our state overrun by Northern troops, in open defiance of the wishes of our citizens and of the appeals from our constituted authorities. That's what Governor Hicks said, don't land in Annapolis. And it continues. I call on you as your commander to rally to the defense of your property and your homes, to enroll yourselves immediately in the companies in 2 classes. The one to defend their homes, the other for service in any part of the state. I hereby command all the officers of the division to use their utmost efforts to effect these objects and to hold themselves in constant readiness to sustain the civil authorities to protect its defensive habits. So the last sentence is really key. Hold yourself in readiness to sustain the civil authorities. Governor Hicks may call on you. I don't know. We'll be ready. If the governor calls, we'll call. It wasn't some other historians, Dixon Preston, trying to make General Tilghman think he was going out, was on the road. He was raising the rebels. No, he's just getting his men ready in case the governor called him to action, that they'll be ready. Considering Annapolis had been occupied, considering all these press releases about we're going to destroy all Maryland, it may be justified. So then you see General Tilghman involved in what we call the Committee of Safety. What is Committee of Safety? And I'll tell you what it's not. And if any of you have seen this book by Dixon Preston did a wonderful job at history of Polk County, except when it comes to the Civil War. He served at Latin Guard. Dixon Preston was the editor of the Eastern Star Democrat. He came from New York. So what does that mean? Well, anyone who grew up in Maryland, we're required to have so much Maryland history in school. You kind of get an idea of a lot of this stuff. But it's very doubtful Dixon Preston had a grandfather and talked about Maryland history at the dinner table, like I had earlier. So he kind of filled in, we didn't know. And also, he did a sources book, footnotes. But we do know from it that his main references was historical articles of the Star Democrat itself, what you find in the library. When he came across this article about the Committee of Safety, I don't know what it is. So in his book, he said it was a coup. He basically said it was a coup, that the secessionists have taken over Talbot County, and they pledged Talbot County for the Confederacy, and they're raising arms, doing all this kind of stuff. Well, it didn't do us any favors for us to So what is committed safety? Well, I'm going to brief you very quickly. It started in the Revolutionary War, and both at the state and at the local level. In fact, the state of Maryland was actually governed by the statewide committee of safety for about a year and a half after a colonial governor left was kicked out, and then during the war until we could have the elections and actually establish a government of them. It was used in War of 1812. And the idea that at the local level also, if there was a crisis, there was no phone call. You got to take care of yourself, your own people, that service would be a Canadian uprising, slave revolt, pirates, whatever, or the state and also the local level establishment committee of safety, and that would be experts in the field, usually military experts. And they would join and they would advise the local government what to do, or they could be delegated certain authority. Go ahead and do it. And so General Tilghman, and in fact in the War of 1812, is called the Committee of Safety and Vigilance. Head right here. That's who was responsible for thwarting the British in St. Michael's. From the Everest Committee of Safety, Talbot County. And so we see the Warren Committee of Safety. It wasn't just Talbot County. It tried to do it statewide. I'll get back to it a little bit, and it didn't do it. But here's an article I found gives you more insight into community safety. The citizens of Eastern Shore are apprehensive that they will be subject to marauding expeditions from fanatics of the North, and are therefore wisely taking measures for protection. You said all those newspaper articles would show that the Northern are coming down. The Commissioner of Talbot County has appropriated $20,000 to arm the people, and a similar appropriation has been recommended in Dorchester County. The citizens of Cambridge have held a meeting at which Judge Spence presided and adopted measures to form a home guard to act as the military police. Judge Spence has adjourned the circuit court in the county until the rebellion excitement subsides. Prince George's County on the Western Shore has also managed to appropriation of $25,000. I found Queen Anne's County had committee of safety, and they appropriated $20,000. In fact, some rich guy just gave money. Prince George's County, found 6 or 7 counties that created their own little community of safeties. And at the time, their local militias really had a bunch of flip-flops, like these farms. But for Talbot County, no one came in with the money, and it was going to be one of the raised taxes and the commissioners.
Today's dollars, how much is $20,000?
Yeah,
$20,000.
That's a lot of money.
Back then.
20,000 in those days.
Yeah, that was. Times to buy. I can't remember. Talbot County, though, when they raise taxes, you just can't raise taxes. You got the permission from the legislature. So I found these articles, these counties want the state legislature raise taxes to arm the people. And the legislature said, we don't want to do anything extreme hostile. And the legislatures quashed all the tax raising for which that never happened. And community of safety is devolved. On the state level, they debated it very long, do a statewide committee of safety, the governor would be part, and they got an ass, like a good idea. Even the person who proposed it thought, nah, that's not a good idea after debating it, and it kind of went away also on the statewide level. And here's another thing on community of safety to talk about, and what's I'm interested is this guy right here, Mulligan. He fought for the Union in the Civil War. He was part of the community of safety during this time. He fought for the Union after the war became part of politics of Talbot County, and he was trying to establish the memorial for Union troops in the courthouse. So it just wasn't a bunch of secessionists. Tilghman did play a role. He was at the meeting. The only thing he did is after a resolution and saying young men of the county should at once enroll themselves in companies for duty, either in the county or any part of the state, and the old men should get ready to defend their county. And that was adopted by that. The meeting of Talbot County is that established this community of safety. And that was all General Tench Tilghman did. He was there, made that recommendation, it was adopted. So again, basic community of safety is that was almost a normal practice for Maryland from the start in times of crisis. Okay, back to Governor Hicks now. Let's try that. April 22nd, the day after Annapolis was Occupied General Butler, he convenes the state legislature, a special session, in meeting Frederick. Had a meeting in Frederick, because Annapolis was occupied by General Butler. He did send him some advice, and his advice was Maryland should stay neutral. Stay out of it. And if no bigger reasons, because of the geography of the state, there's no way we can visit it now. At this point, Governor Hicks was neutral. Quickly became very pro Mr. Lincoln. So here's what Abraham Lincoln did about the Maryland legislature convening. He sent an order to his top commander, Michael Scott. Paraphrase, because I therefore conclude, because he didn't know what the legislature would do, that it's only left to the commanding general to watch and await their action, which, if it shall be to arm their people against the United States, he is to adopt the most prompt and efficient means to counteract, even if necessary, to the bombardment of their cities. As again, as a Marine officer, I think this is amazing. If the legislature arms their people, this ain't just a secede. Just go ahead and bombard all those civilians in all the cities. And that's tough right there. Following historians to try to say, well, I think Mr. Lincoln really meant was Maryland issues of secession in the bombarding cities. But I disproved that. And here's why. Because just 2 days later, okay, I guess for some reason this is not coming out. General Winfield Scott issues his attack plan against the city of Baltimore. I just briefed a little while ago, on the 21st, a week prior, the Maryland delegation got Mr. Lincoln says those troops, so no intention against Marylanders. They seem to pass through around. And then in the War Rebellion, I found this attack plan. The main commanders were General Patterson and General Butler. And in that order, it's right in the War Rebellion, there's lots of follow-up to it. It goes, the next step will be by force, occupy Baltimore, and reopen regular communications between Washington and Philadelphia by rail and wires. Wow. He sent out to his commanders, and I wish you to consider and methodize the second and third attacks and give me your views in advance on the whole project. But I've got a theory on Winfield Scott. I think he really liked this idea. He's following orders. And my book goes in much more detail about how the Secretary of State and War passed all this down to open up Baltimore by force. And the very end of his order goes, nothing shall prevent the occupation of Baltimore by common force, but the voluntary reopening of free communication by rail and wire through Baltimore and Maryland before my plans are ready. And again, I think this is interesting as a Marine Corps officer. Why would he have that? His subordinates don't even know that, what he'll do. But you'll see why, I think, in my theory. I'm proving it. Because, and just to back up, so, the attack plan, General Butler moved up the relay, General Patterson was ready, the order was issued to attack. It was issued to attack. General Patterson goes, I'm not ready. My power's dry, let's say all these reasons. And even the Secretary of State or Secretary of War, Cameron, sent a telegraph. Move now. And Patterson goes, I'm not ready to go. I can't move, so delayed. And he delayed for 1 or 2 days, and then all of a sudden, it's phenomenal. In the New York Tribune, the whole attack plan was published. And this is a part of it. This is on May 3rd. It's published on the 4th. And it goes, Baltimore to be occupied. It is also decided to approach and occupy Baltimore. The Army of Occupation will move in 4 columns, one from Perryville, one from Harrisburg, one from Annapolis, and one from Washington. Of course, no opposition is anticipated, though no possible successful could be placed in their way. He also said that General Scott says that they'll attack unless they open up freely. And this article goes on to say it's 100,000 Northerners without attack Baltimore, 100,000, or it's 15,000 militia Baltimore. And they lied, 100,000, but a lot. So what happened? Now, I think this was intentionally disseminated. My theory. Either way, the attack plan would say, well, and you won't find this in any history book because no one publishes it. If you go to a history book, what happened in Maryland? April 19th, that's when General Butler came in Baltimore on May 13th. It's a big wait. We're going to hear a little bit about meeting with Lincoln, but you will not hear about the attack plan. Think about it. The 4th largest city in the United States, Fort Worth, the city had held the largest free black population, 22,000 free blacks or more. Mr. Lincoln's getting ready to attack it. And Maryland had to see it. Oh, and I forgot to add, part of that attack plan, Winfield Scott gave the General Butler Lincoln's authorization that they take arms on border cities. So Lincoln said that, and 2 days later, Winfield Scott gave that to General Butler. The president said if they take arms against the United States, they were authorized by border cities. And that refutes these following stories and say, well, what Mr. Lincoln believed that is Maryland seceded. I have issues with that. That's a little hard-handed. Anyway, it is what it is. Okay. May 6th, Baltimore capitulates. Baltimore capitulates in 3 ways, and he did it all publicly. I couldn't find a good article about what the city council says. First thing he did by public analysis, the city council and the mayor put out that, hey, Baltimore's open, the emergency's over with, the troops can pass through freely. Okay. Second thing they did is Colonel Scribble, in charge of the military, in charge of the militia in Baltimore, he stands down militia. And here's that right here, published in, I think it was the Baltimore Sun, May 6th. And the first paragraph is telling the Board of Police, believing that all immediate and present danger to the safety of the city has in a great measure, if not altogether, passed away. Deeming it proper to disband the volunteer forces of the city, organize, preserve order. And he goes on, thank you very much, Irish Tribune. The third thing Baltimore did, or Maryland authorities did on May 6th, all at the same time, was to remove General Tilghman from command. General Tilghman was well respected by General Scott. He had a 2nd Division on the Eastern Shore. He could attack the flank. If General Scott continues to attack. And we see that again in public announcement, again, May 6th, from the governor. And he says he doesn't hold a lawful commission. And that solves the mystery of why General Tilghman because it was done to submit and to prevent the Battle of Baltimore. The next day, it's all May 6th public, the very next day, May 7th, General Scott calls off the attack of Baltimore. We got that right in the War Rebellion. And on May 9th, orders Patterson to move through Baltimore administratively. And on May 9th, Northern troops start passing through the city. That was a close one. And the only one I found that talk about this attack was a guy named Radcliffe from the Johns Hopkins Press. He published it in 1801. And he said the only thing that prevented Baltimore from being taken by storm or a big clash was General Patterson failing to move. And you don't hear anyone else talk about that. I kind of wondered why. That's kind of important history. There was an actual attack order. Okay. Just a little bit about the General Tilghman. The Maryland legislature took up about General Tilghman's commission being taken. And what had happened, Maryland law changed. They changed the way you take your oath of command or oath of higher rank. And it wasn't really disseminated that well. So a bunch of officers took their oath of higher rank a certain way and not the correct way, and Governor Hicks used that as a technicality to relieve him of his commission. The legislature reappointed him to his rank, but never gave him a command. And we're going to talk about the legislature because there's so much involved in children. Legislature itself, I said, Governor Hicks called a special session to meet in the summer of '61. He met 3 times. Let me use the pointer. Anyway, met 3 times. But look at the schedule. First met on April 26th. We'll talk about what they did real quick. They met for about 3 weeks. And then they took a 3-week recess. And they met again for 3 weeks, from June 4th to June 26th. They took a 5-week recess. And then they met for just a single 1-week session, and they were taking like a 6-week recess. Before they're supposed to meet again on the 17th of September, so very bad. So that looked like a schedule of the legislature. Once the city of Maryland for meeting. You work through it, continue the problem early on until you don't do it. But this is when they were, I tell you, arrested right here. We're going what the legislature did, because this is part of General Tilghman's legacy. Their first session, They did three things. They issued these reports. First one was addressed to people in Maryland. Second one was a report on the Committee on Federal Relations regarding calling the Sovereign Convention, and then passing resolutions. The resolutions actually came from the report. The report was committee recommendations, and the legislation adopted. What is each one? Well, the first one addressed the people of Maryland. The very first thing they did when it came to session, they told people of Maryland, we have no constitutional authority to secede Maryland. We're not going to do it. They did say, however, is that the people did have the right to alter or change their government through a sovereign convention. They did say that. So the second thing they did was state in the next report resolutions that the Maryland legislature will not call a sovereign convention of the people. So they said, we're not going to secede Maryland and we're not going to call a sovereign convention. But they, in the report, they also put in some other resolutions and a little bit of protests. It's the people of Maryland want reconciliation and peace. That Marylanders want no part of this war, and they protest against the same. And he said, Maryland will do nothing that could be construed as hostile against the federal government, to include arming the militia. They won't do anything that's hostile. So, but they were protesting. Then they went on recess. They came back in June and they published a few more things. And this is, I'm going to go into detail, but this is really kind of telling what's happening in Maryland. The first one, if you can read it, was the message of the governor regarding to the disarming the state military. Disarming the state military? Well, I said earlier, Governor Hickson initially wanted to be neutral. Right after the Baltimore riots, he had some secret meetings from Mr. Lincoln. There's no record of it. After that, he became very pro Mr. Lincoln and his policies. And Governor Hickson issued an order to the state for the militias, all militias of the state, turning your arms to the federal government. Turn them to me, and you have the state, turn them to the federal government, they're paid for Henry. And in regular Easton at Armory, and on June 13th, we had the Union troops come down, and with the governor's warrant, all kinds of newspaper articles to collect all the arms and take them off. So very early on, in June, and it was a continuous process as more Union troops spread out, but we were basically disarmed in June. The other thing they talked about, and they published it. You notice there's thousands of copies printed. They're telling the people in Maryland what they're doing. In fact, their sessions were open to the public. People went in all this kind of stuff. And then they talked about the report of the peace commissioners. Well, the previous sessions, they asked me to send out peace commissioners, meet with Mr. Lincoln, Jeff Davis, maybe we can hold off a war, and Congress come to session. But that failed, but they wanted peace. Third thing they issued, this is important, protests of the General Assembly against the illegal arrest and imprisonment by the federal government of citizens of Maryland. Okay, that pretty much tells you all. The Union troops were coming in, occupying Maryland. They're arresting Marylanders left and right. You know, some say habeas corpus was just along, and suspension was just along Philadelphia to Washington. Wherever Union troops were, they suspended habeas corpus, and they were arresting citizens. There's a guy named Ross Winnings, a member of the legislature, coming back from Frederick. And they stopped at Relay House. Union troops came on. Ross Winnings was sitting next to the governor of Maryland. Now, Ross Winnings was one of the most wealthiest men in the nation. Big philanthropist. He did a lot for Baltimore. Helped with the sewage and other stuff. He had a soup kitchen that fed several thousand poor people in Baltimore daily. Very good man. Older life, he went into the legislature. They arrested him by General Butler's orders. And in General Butler's autobiography, General Butler said he wanted to execute Ross Winnings in a public square, Monument Square, Baltimore, to teach Marylanders a lesson. If I can execute the most wealthiest one, then I'll teach those Marylanders a lesson. That was in the biography. That was narrowly avoided. And that's how brutal some of this occupation was. Now, there was a misunderstanding also. Ross Winnings had a foundry. The foundry had produced some kind of Gatling gun. Someone else did it, not Ross Winnings. They thought Winnings already did it anyway. But they weren't going to give Winnings a trial. Military corporation. Anyway, that. And then the resolutions of the General Assembly, the more resolutions, which was more of a protest. And so what the protest was, they basically, on this session, they protested an unlawful arrest of the citizens. They cited numerous violations of the United States Constitution, and they cited tyrannical assertion of military of Marylanders and property. the military's coming. When the military came in, they took over the government, they were in charge, and we're saying that was a violation of the Constitution, of the sovereignty of Maryland. And they protested. They went into recess, again, a 5-week recess. And 2 days after he went on recess, this guy got arrested. He was the chief of police in Baltimore, which became, remember I said he put himself between the riot and the federal troops, like 19, protect them? He'd been protecting passive federal troops ever since May 9th. From May 9th to June 27th, 1,000 troops won. He was responsible on this mission to provide escort protection. 1,000 Union troops surrounded his house in the middle of the night, hauling him off to jail. He said, you're gonna just give me a note, I'll turn myself in a door. Well, the next day, a provost marshal comes in and tells the Baltimore police commissioners, you're gone, I'm in charge. Well, I'm in charge of the Baltimore police, everything. And the police commissioner didn't like it, so he sent a protest to Congress because they were displaced by a provost marshal.
What is a provost marshal?
It's a good term. I say it's a federal figure that is head of in charge of the local area. It's police authority, federal like police officer in charge. He was under Lincoln's authority, under the authority of the Union Patrol, and now he's governor. He's the guy. And they took this power. The police commissioners put together a heck of a protest. They put this Congress. Congress was going to come in session July 4th. Back in those days, if you saw my last class Carmichael, if you dissented or you protested, you were aiding and abetting the enemy. And of course, what happened to the police commissioners? They were imprisoned. Wow. These were men that were appointed by the state legislature. They were appointed by the state legislature to run the police department. They're also, we didn't know this until later, one of their primary tasks was to ensure that they run the elections in Baltimore, and to ensure the elections were free and fair. Guess who's going to run the elections now? November 7th, the statewide election. The provost marshal and the troops. I had myself there. That's something else I figured out. All right, so on July 20, they got the protest at Congress in July 24. Congress passed a resolution asking Mr. Lincoln, hey, why did you arrest these police commissioners? They're outstanding men. They're topics of the community. And Mr. Lincoln answers, in answer to the resolution of the House of Representatives of the 24th District, asking the grounds, reason, evidence upon which the police commissioners of Baltimore were arrested and are now detained as prisoners in Fort McHenry, I have to say it is judged to be incompatible with the public interest at this time to furnish the information called for in the resolution. Because I'm going to tell you, I don't know why your PDF, you must have grabbed the wrong slide thing, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Did you grab the PDF? You didn't grab the PDF, you grabbed it.
Probably.
So far, you don't match up, because I shouldn't have all these animations. Okay.
Do you want me to switch?
I can continue on this problem. Okay.
I still have it in here.
If you switch real quick, I'm doing time. We're at an hour, sliding 5. Yeah, a little behind. So the PDF, okay, so go down to slide 85.
Oh. I typed in 85 and it did 854.
Page 85.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the big event. You just imprisoned police commissioners, no charge, no trial. You took over your prison day. Thank police commissioners responsible for protecting the Union troops. What's going on here? So when the legislature came back in session on July 30th, they only did really one thing. One thing only. They looked at the report of the police commissioners, a copy of the same report as the Congress. They sent it to the legislature also. And they created, the legislature created what was called report and resolutions of the Joint Committee of the Senate and House Delegates of Maryland upon the reports and memorials of the police commissioners and the mayor and city council of Baltimore. It was a big protest, and this was the last protest too. For short, we call it the Walsh Report. Newspapers would call it the Walsh Report after the chairman of the committee severed tobacco laws. I'm a lawyer from Baltimore, he's a member of the state legislature. And then I'll read you one thing. It says the state legislature decided to have 25,000 copies of this report printed and sent out throughout the nation. And here's what they said: there is but one recourse left to us, and that is to appeal to public opinion and a sense of right of the whole country to call on free and true men everywhere in our own state and our sister states to lift their voices for the rescue of the Constitution before it shall have gone down into the vortex whose narrow and rapid circles have already swept this great bulwarks from around the rights of the people of Maryland. It was a 25-page report with attached as visuals. They ordered 25,000 copies to be printed, and it says right up there, right? I think it's like, yeah, right there, 25,000 copies. Wow, big protest. Did I say something earlier about in the last class, dissenters or protesters? Didn't go well during this time. They signed their names, who voted yay and nay. And what? And say J.L. Jones, Polk County voted yay. It was House delegate. H.H. Goldsboro voted nay. It's also released. But they had the courage to do that. I thought it was pretty cool. The next day, everything happened the next day, Mr. Lincoln issues an executive order. Give intelligence to enemy, either directly or indirectly, is made possible by death, or such other punishment as shall be ordered by the sentence of court martial. It is therefore ordered that all correspondence and communication, verbally or by writing, printing, or telegraph, respecting operations of the Army or military movements, without the authority and sanction of the Major General Command, be and the same is absolutely prohibited. He took control of the press. No uncertain term. Common had agreed with the press just a week prior. They drafted agreement about. But also the Lincoln, the day after, they voted, the Maryland legislature voted to have 25,000 copies printed and sent out the nation about all the constitutional elevations. Lincoln takes control of the press. And now I rely upon a couple other authors. Harold Holzer, very distinguished, about Mr. Lincoln and public opinion, and Harold Holzer about Lincoln and the power of the press, how he manipulated the press to manipulate public opinion. And Andrea Mitchell wrote something about Lincoln's lie. And Holzer very well documents, one thing he documented, that Mr. Lincoln had actually purchased a German newspaper during his presidential campaign in Illinois, because he fought the German vote. High German immigration in Illinois was key to winning the election. He purchased a German newspaper and said, "You only say good things about me and bad stuff against my opponent, or I will seize your presses and take them out." And that came out later, but they didn't know it at the time. Harold Holzer has Lincoln quoted as public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Against it, nothing can succeed. Whoever molds public sentiment goes deeper than he enacts statutes or pronounces judicial decisions. He makes the enforcement of these laws impossible. Mr. Lincoln was a politician. He knew the power of public opinion. And this war was the first war we had actually communications. 50,000 miles of telegraph cable was around the country. Morse code, stuff was probably, I don't know how he did it, across the country overnight. And Mr. Lincoln definitely used that. Remember I said earlier, the dissenters and protesters, some very bad would happen to them, probably arrests. Well, even Mr. Lincoln can't just go in and arrest the legislature. You got to have a reason. So, about a week, a little more than a week after he clamps on the press, we see from Washington special dispatches. Special dispatches in Washington. I kind of showed this earlier, but I'm reading August 16th. 9 days after it's published on August 16th. So it was out. Here's what we say. It came from Washington, came from the War Department. The efforts of the rebels to gather Maryland into secession fold have not been abandoned. It was noticed some weeks ago that a civil rebel force has been concentrated in the upper part of Accomack County on eastern Virginia. It appears that there are about 1,500 to 2,000 rebels under arms. General Tilghman, from Tulsa County, Maryland, who was exposed as militia rank last year with Governor Hicks and subsequently restored by the state legislature, is organizing this unionists in the lower counties of Maryland. He's about to proceed to Accomack, command the Virginia forces there, and march them up the middle eastern shore of Maryland as a nucleus of the formation of a rebel army there, which shall, if it can do nothing else, control the elections in the fall, so to secure a disputed majority in the legislature and enable the secessionists to pass the secession plans. So it's talking about control elections. So that was pretty cool. And I said it's not just one article, but multiple articles. And here we go on the 19th. And the key thing here is the very last sentence, and it goes, basically says, what we told you last week is now repeated with increased assurance of its truth and with such evidence as cannot be disregarded. And again, it goes on about the rebel attack plans, all these plans. And another article on the 20th, Herald, I kind of showed you this, and this one was extremely detailed. I mean, it goes on and on. I'm not going to read it to you because it's probably pressed for time, but extremely detailed about the attack. And this one's where we got with the Mayor Brown would have the diversion, and the legislature would issue a secession, and rebels would cross, and he says, Union gunboats would be in position to stop all this, and blah, blah, blah. Very detailed article. And again, it has, again, it mentions General Tilghman. And now they have included ex-Governor Enoch Lewis Lowe as the leaders. Ex-Governor Lowe had been a member of the States' Rights Party during that time, so they mentioned him. Again, these articles I found in every major paper in North America, every major paper in Europe, every English-speaking paper in Europe. I didn't go into French and Spanish about this big plan. And then we have General Tilghman's denial. And I'll just go to the second page and cover. And he says, as you have thus given currency to the charge that is entirely untrue, I hope you will do me the justice to publish the following denial. I'm not organizing this genius in the lower counties of Maryland or anywhere else, nor do I know of any such organization. I'm not about to proceed to act to take Virginia forces there, nor have I any information in regard to Virginia forces anywhere except that derived from the newspapers. I have no knowledge of any attempt or intention to raise and introduce troops into this or any other part of Maryland to enforce the ordinance of secession that may be passed by the present legislature or to control elections in the fall for the purpose of obtaining a passage of the secession ordinance. The statement of your correspondence is positive. He asserts that I am raising troops in Maryland and about to take command of an army in Virginia and marching into Maryland for the purpose of revolutionizing the government whilst holding a military commission in Maryland. This is a charge of treason which you have published and for which I shall hold whoever may be responsible to a strict and full accountability. Your obedient servant, Tench Tilghman. They always say obedient servant. And the Herald published this. Other newspapers put little blurbs, General denies. All those big news reports about the rebel attack plan, they were published throughout. But Herald published this entirety. Other newspapers that carry this in, down page 4, General denies not much damage to them. So now the world believes that the Maryland legislature got the issue of secession, and General Tilghman's going to lead in their Confederate Army. So that made it very easy. There was actually a secret meeting with Secretary Seward, Cameron, and Lincoln on the carriage ride to discuss it. On September 11th, Secretary Ward Cameron issues this order to have the Maryland legislature arrested. Passage and any act of secession by the legislature of Maryland must be prevented. And that goes to General Tilghman. The 11th. Interestingly, the very next day, September 12th, full front page of the New York Herald. It's a map showing Confederate forces in position ready to cross Potomac. Seeing the coming conflict, 300,000 strong. And in the articles that say Maryland's going to issue orders of secession, and all these Confederates are in position to come across. Map. Can't do that map in one day. And certainly all this military information falls within Lincoln's censor. Here's what I want to tell you. All this I just told you about these forces, the Confederate positions, I researched my tail off. It is not supported. During that same day, General Stone of the Observation Corps along Potomac said, there's nothing going on across the sea. There's no forces. Same day. In the order done. It's his orders. Later on, after the arrest of Mr. Tilghman, General Lockwood sent down a regiment to Akron, Virginia. Didn't want anything. There was nothing going on here. Nothing. Crickets. We know the Confederates had abandoned Eastern Virginia. We go into orders of the Confederate Army. They weren't anywhere near here. They weren't strong. All that stuff after exhaustive research, disinformation, fake, fake. General Tench Tilghman. It's better. So that night, September 12th, they arrest again. Started in Baltimore. They arrested the legislature members that were in Baltimore. They were held there, 6 or 7 members of the legislature. They arrested the mayor of Baltimore. They arrested U.S. Congressman Henry May. Congressman. He wasn't the only congressman arrested during the Civil War. I found there was one guy from, I think, Illinois got elected. They arrested him too. They arrested Frankie Howard and other newspaper editors that night. Frankie Howard, by the name, Frank Key, was a grandson of Francis Scott Key. The next morning, he woke up at Fort McHenry in shackles, in a cell, and he realizes this is the anniversary of that battle of Fort McHenry. My grandfather wrote the Star Spangled Banner. And he looks out his cell and sees that flag flying, and all the words of the Star Spangled Banner that say the home of the brave and the free. And Frankie Howard goes, how ironic. He's in his shadows. You gotta control the press. If you start doing arrests, you gotta control the press. So that was a point of initial part of arrest was newspaper editors. And then we see a little more disinformation and published attack plans were foiled. Secession ordinances were found. Indisputable evidence. Blah, blah, blah. Here's one, New York Times. I have dozens and dozens of those. Here's one. Upon one of them was found a draft of the ordinance of secession. New York article. Here's another New York Herald. I was supposed to read this for probably at time. It is known that some of the arrested secession members of the legislature had a program all prepared by which an act was to be passed, declaring Maryland out of the Union and a state of the Southern Confederacy. The movement of the rebel army up the river was preparatory to a contemplated Union cross. So how to fold this plan. Remember, I also told you that Maryland was really sworn back in January, September. And other quick news reports. Maryland rebel militia broken up and its officers arrested. But here's interesting. I found lots of references to this. Remember I told you they all signed their names on that Wallace report, that big protest? And we found published, have arrested all members of the legislature who voted for S.T. Apple Wallace's report. 30,000 copies of the same have been seized as treasonable documents. Only the members who voted in the report. I got lots of research on this. I actually found a member of Third Wisconsin himself who wrote into his local paper. Yeah, we were ordered only to arrest the members of that treason report and to find and burn all copies. And lots of big articles. They found and burned all copies of treason. It's a protest. And I think that is the reason why the legislature was arrested. And J. Lawrence Jones of Polk County was in prison without charge and trial for 18 months. Fort McHenry, Fort Warren, Fort Lafayette, Fort Warren, Boston Harbor. Henry Holiday Goldsboro was senator for Easton, Polk County. Yeah, he's full of career continued. They asked Mr. Lincoln, the Baltimore American, gave a statement about the rest of the legislature. They asked him, that's what it says. The public safety renders it necessary that the grounds of these arrests should at present be withheld. But at the proper time, they will be made public. Of one thing, the people of Maryland may rest assured that no arrest has been made or will be made, not based on substantial and unmistakable complicity with those in armed rebellion against the government of the United States. In no case has an arrest been made on mere suspicion or through personal or partisan animosities, but in all cases, the government is in possession of tangible and unmistakable evidence, which will, when made public, be satisfactory to every loyal citizen. Mr. Lincoln spent 163 years and no evidence of being presented to the legislature. And my book will detail when they came back, and these members of the legislature held, they had no communication outside the world during the first part until after the elections. And when they found out about this, we were not seceded there. 17 Apple Walls with Senator Sherman, a lot of it. No evidence has been found. No words of secession has been found. Nothing has been found when they were intended to secede, as is reported for sure. Okay. Back to General Tilghman. September 25th, 1861, General Lockwood orders Lieutenant Colonel Bailey and 2 companies to occupy Easton. John Lockwood had just set his headquarters up in Cambridge, and he had 2 companies go over to Easton. They arrived at 7 p.m. It was Company B and Company C of the 2nd Delaware Regiment. They arrived at Easton Point with Captain C.H. Crispin and Ben Ricketts commanding. They marched to Easton and set up camp by 9 p.m. Next slide. Next slide. Trina. Next slide. Okay. By 9 p.m., the first thing they decided to do, we're going to arrest the secessionists, General Tilghman. We heard about it. So 11 p.m., Captain Ricketts and 13 men set out for Clinton. They had a local guide. I can't find out who the local guide was. It a 14-mile march to Clinton. They stowed their packs about a half-mile out. They were well armed, carbines and pistols. They slowly sneak up around the house and circle it. And then they leave out. Well, so the captain decided to knock on the door. The door, General Tench opens the door. He's in his robe, he's in his night hat, and he's under arrest. He goes, okay, thank you very much. Then he didn't have a problem. They searched the house. He found some old muskets from the military academy. General Tench was taken to Cambridge. Interrogated by General Lockwood. He was in prison and interrogated for 8 days. And released on parole. Very little terms of his parole. Not to be faulted. He's required to take an oath in the United States. Very little terms. We find in the paper also, after examination, has been honorably discharged and returned to his home. So I was on a rabbit dog and a hunt. I want to find more about what happened. General Tilghman. So I go to National Archives, and here's something very interesting we find. National Archives. So General Tilghman stayed with Clinton and applied for his parole. But about 2 years later, October of '63, he goes, I got property in Virginia. I need to go down there. Something reading, I'm reading it, widows and orphans and they care for, but he had property down there. So he puts up in the chain of command, hey, I'd like to leave my parole and go down to Virginia Beach and short to my property out of that. So it goes up, and here's to the War Department, and there were supporting documents from officers of the chain of command. And this document says, it is represented that General Tench Tilghman officer has property in Accomack and the neighboring counties of Virginia. And so it requires his presence, but that he is stopped by his parole from going there. All right, so that's where we find that in the National Archives. And then we got here. Slide. My slide. It's very hard to read, but I'll read it for you. It's the point of it. And this officer says he had a full investigation and was honorably acquitted of all charges brought against him. Notwithstanding that, he was placed on his parole. Acquitted of all charges. Okay. So it goes up the chain of command. Another, could be the same one. This department is satisfied that it would not be prejudicial to the public interest to relax General Tench's parole so far as to allow him to visit Eastern Shore, Virginia, to attend his private business. So this one's the chain of command for the War Department. This is Adjutant Townsend. What does Adjutant Townsend do? This is the big brother. Sack of the Capitol, lead an army. And I'll read you this letter. War Department, Adjutant General's Office, Washington, November 13, 1863. To Tench Tilghman Esquire, Oxford, Maryland. Sir, I have the honor hereby to relieve you by direction of the Secretary of War from the operation of any parole you may have given to the military authorities of the United States. Wow. They let him go. No parole whatsoever. There's still war still going on. It's 1863. You could have gone south, no? Yeah. What's that tell you? The misinformation was he's raised an army in Accomack, Virginia, and leave it up. And now 2 years later, he wants to go back to Accomack to your property, and just don't worry about it. So that tells you a lot. That tells you a lot. The interesting thing about General Tilghman's arrest, I found so many arrests. Judge Carmichael's arrest, here we call it, was by order of Secretary Seward, very high level. General Tilghman's arrest decided by the captains of companies. I think General Tilghman was doing all this. I mean, sure would have been arrested a long time ago. They knew it was being set up. They knew it was fake information, obviously. That's just another point. We got here, just to finish up on Tilghman. So he really didn't do much after the war that I know of. He kind of hung low. We know that Clinton got sold at auction. Farming was not very good, not very productive after the Civil War. And here's a thing, a share sale for Clinton. After that, General Sherman went up to Baltimore and lived out his last 3 days in Baltimore itself. Couldn't find anything that where he participated in any more democracies or debates. He kind of kept himself. And he died on December 22nd, 1874, 5 a.m. And that's pretty much the General Tilghman's legacy. So, to recap, he was a man that helped Tulsa County, railroads, church, military academy, participate in democracy. He obviously believed that the people had the right to alter and abolish and change whatever was in the Maryland Constitution. His act to stand up his division of militia was just preparing for war. But he was used and to prevent the attack against Baltimore, because he was most very highly respected by General Scott, his commission. Governor Hicks, by the way, after he left office, President Lincoln appointed him as a brigadier general. Kind of as a reward. Hicks went very close to Lincoln. And then he didn't really serve in the military because of his health, but then he later appointed Lincoln to place the senator for Maryland. Maryland legislature really had no interest in seceding Maryland, and many reasons. They were middle ground, but also geography of Maryland, that sort of stuff that you can't defend to say anything else. By the time the Maryland legislature was arrested on September 17th, the state of Maryland was fully disarmed by help of Governor Hicks and no weapons. Most of the hotheads who believed in states' rights that really had left. They went south months prior. Maryland was fully occupied by an overwhelming force of Union troops. And General McClellan says, I got a quote in my book from my McClellan, General Dix. We had no problem keeping Maryland militarily. What we want is to influence them in public opinion. And so what happened, if you go in my book, the legislature was arrested. I'll wrap it up here. I said the provost marshal was in charge of the elections in Baltimore. Baltimore was 1/3 of all the votes for the state of Maryland. And that election, on November 6th, was for all the Maryland delegates, half the Senate, and for the governor. Huge election for the state. The provost marshal and the General Dix put out a lot of information. Traitors will not be allowed to vote, all that kind of stuff. And I found in the Baltimore Sun elections yesterday, arrests. And the Baltimore Sun wrote about how when the Democrats came out to vote, they were immediately arrested. Listed like 160 names, voted, and these are the charges. Attempting to vote a treasonable, in quotes, Democrat. And then they had the Baltimore Sun 3 days later put out the election counts throughout Baltimore City and all the counties. The presidential election of 1860, 30,000 Baltimoreans voted. In this election, like 20,000 voted. It was down by a third. I also found where 6 or 7 counties were targeted. Troops that weren't there were sent out. And those counties' vote count was down by 5%. And the counties that didn't have federal troops, vote count was up. The elections were controlled in the play. By the way, before the elections, 120 election judges quit in Baltimore. That's illegality. The election control to ensure Baltimore would be ruled by what they call unconditional unionists. Unionists who would support Mr. Lincoln, not be neutral. Mr. Lincoln needed men and money for war supplies. And it's a real shocker. If you get in my book, it's a statewide elections 1863. It's actually a showdown with Governor Bradford and Mr. Lincoln. And Mr. Lincoln says to Governor Bradford about the control of elections. They were going to have color-coded ballots. And Union troops with swords drawn needed a ballot. And Governor Bradford and Lincoln got back and forth. Mr. Lincoln goes, why are you protesting? If I recall, that's what General Dix did to get you elected. And my book really goes into the 63 elections and what happened there. And that's a little more background to this and why the legislature was arrested to create these vacancies and get those politicians out of office replaced by more uniqueness that we're used in the street. And that's all I got. The only thing I say is, if you want to buy a copy of the book, we'll give you $20. I just shoved the bought one last week, but that's all I have. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned a little bit. I know it's a lot of information, going fast and furious, and I really only touched the tip of the iceberg. I mean, my book has 900 footnotes, citing 1,100 sources, either from papers or official records kept in archives. Any questions?
I'm curious where you got that picture that's supposed to be of General Tilghman.
And later on,
Yeah, it doesn't look like a mid-18th century picture. It looks like more like a 19th century.
It does.
Shirt and tie and.
that's it.
Yeah.
That's in a 12 historical society. It's a portrait. And even on the page, it's listed, General Tilghman in the back, it says General Tench Tilghman. Older legs. I can never find, that's all we find. I found some photographs of the sons, Tench and Francis. That's where that came from. So that's cool. It was. He looks like a pretty regular guy. I mean, it's like, any other questions? Anybody? Rick Covell, you got a question? Can't hear you, Rick.
I was just going to say on April 12th, it was 4:30 in the morning that they fired that shot at Fort Sumter. And I just read the other day that the General Beauregard was very upset. It was very, very upset. It was supposed to be fired at, excuse me, just a second, fired at 4:15 instead of 4:30.
But, and some people think that I'm like a pro-Confederacy, but I'm not. You know, I'm glad that you're working on this. I'm pro-Maryland. What happened in Maryland? That's the truth. It needs to be told. And Maryland was not a part of the Confederacy. And in the last part of my book, I put Maryland has seceded and let alone. And I use all the arguments. Absolutely not. Maryland will never have seceded.
You read Eric Larson's book yet?
It's Kirby.
Okay, thank you. The other evening at the Historical Society party, Richard Tillman was the speaker.
Yes.
And he was telling stories. Remember that story about Jefferson Davis? Were you there?
Yes.
Jefferson Davis, who came for the weekend and left a day early and left a note that said, "You thought I was a country bumpkin, and I thought you were a gentleman, and we were both mistaken." That must have been about the same time. Don't you suppose Jefferson Davis was?
That would be absolutely. Davis came out. Okay, my understanding is after.
Oh, I know.
My understanding is after.
Okay.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But, and my book goes into why historians think Maryland more secessionist than one national. The constitutional unionists, that was the main theory. You want to be union, but you want to respect the Constitution.
Yeah.
And the Constitution, unionists, what the legislature was, they want to respect the Constitution, and they were just lumped in as being secessionists because they weren't supporting Mr. Lincoln. And because they were labeled that, a lot of following historians overestimated Maryland's true desire to secede from the Union. My theory, what I come up with.
Well, fake news must have been, would have been a lot easier to generate.
Sorry?
Fake news would have been a lot easier to generate.
Yes.